they're saying now to us? They're saying, those of you who are making it, those of you who have PhD from University of Chicago and the head of mental health centers, you got it made. It's a class struggle now. Class. And we all know which they care. See what happened in the 60s. Why we lost the battle in the 60s. Why you never hear nobody talk about the 70s. How many of you people here talk about the 70s? Nobody. Everybody, boy, in the 60s. And here we are in the 80s. Nobody talk. Because in the 70s, those whites regrouped and wiped us out. You see, here's what happened. White women saw their men in trouble. And like all female animals, anytime the male gets in trouble, the female attacks. That is a law of nature. A law of nature. If you don't believe it, we can prove it in a zoo anytime we want to. Now, what happened, white women came out and captured our women and convinced us that white women were not as racist as white men. And convinced us, or convinced our women, that they would place them above their husbands, their brothers, their lovers, their children, their sons, and we said, then the white gays came out and convinced our gays it was a gay struggle and stole our gays. Okay? White students came out and grabbed our black students, said it was a student struggle, and wiped out our black students. And all of a sudden, we have to wonder, where's the fight? So now they're coming up with books such as, book is The Declining Significance of Race. Brother named Wilson wrote that book, who is the chairperson of the Department of Sociology at the University of Chicago. That's very revealing. Because out of that same department came who? Black bourgeoisie. E. Franklin Frazier in 1939. That is the Chicago school where you show. So what Wilson is saying, this brother wrote this book, The Declining Significance of Race. And race is declining in significance, and now class becomes important. Of course, Wilson is the only black in the Department of Sociology at the University of Chicago. That's one reality. The other reality, he has a white wife. Now, race declines every night for him. So which way do they get our brightest students? What we need to begin to develop, that's what all these conferences should be back. And keep that in mind. The only reason I go around the country is to begin to develop a black social theory. A black social theory. Now, this is the problem we have. Why we're in all this problem? Because one of the things that happened to your generation that didn't happen to me and to everybody else who's at my age is when I was growing up, the black community rewarded those people who tried to get an education. Rewarded them. Now we are anti-intellectual, anti-educational, and completely ahistorical. Don't pay any attention to history. So what they do to us is our brightest black minds. Look, these are our brightest brothers and sisters. They grab through their social theories. One is Marxism. Marxism. That's the danger to all our black students. That's class theory. Class. Now let's do Marx just like we did Maslow. Let's do it quickly. Marx said basically there are two classes of people. One he called what? The ruling class, the bourgeoisie. The other he called the what? Proletariat. Proletariat. Two classes. And the relationship to these two classes is the production of what? Means of production. This relationship. And the ruling class' sole reason to exist is for profit. Profit. And in order to make more profit, they would have to exploit this group of people. Marx went even further. He said just by time alone, you don't need any intervention. Just time alone means that ultimately the proletariat would have to overthrow the ruling class in order to survive. Because the more profit the ruling class wanted, the more they would want, the more exploitation of the profit. But he said something else. He said that if you had people who understood the science of capital, the science of what he was talking about Marxism, you could then raise the contradiction, artificially raise the contradiction between them. That's the word raising the contradictions came about, those slogans that the Panthers used and didn't understand. Raise the contradiction between these two groups and induce revolution. See, Marx lived in 1848. And Marx didn't know that this proletariat here was going to things called what? Unions. And guess what unions are for? Profit. So you got two damn groups of white folks fighting over profit. Okay, now, blacks are not in the ruling class, or in the unions, believe it or not. The blacks are what Marx called what? The lumpen proletariat. Now, the Panthers, and I'm not just picking on Panthers, many of them are my students who are opted to not stay in the struggle for race and did it for class and ass. The thing about this here is that even the Panthers start calling us what? Lumpen. The lumpen proletariat. Guess what Marx said about the lumpen proletariat? Marx stated that the lumpen proletariat was not a potential revolutionary force. So even Marx said that. So because they're what? They're not cause of the means of what? Production. So if you admit that we are lumpen proletariat, you cannot say you're a Marx. Not as a black person, unless you need my professional services. You can't. I mean, you simply can't do that. We can. I tell you, we know Naeem and I, we got this thing going. I always say, The one contradiction in the black community, and I'm very serious about this. I know stuff I sound funny. I'm very serious about it. Is that we have no contradictions. That's the one contradiction. There are no contradictions in the black community, and that is because, again, the thing I'm talking about, mental side.
Kind of control that's maintained in the environment. It sort of leads to what I might call sort of a subterfuge, where sometimes you have to produce, as the Bible verse says, give unto Caesar what Caesar's, and at the same time, though, develop your own. Meaning that the black student quite often is placed in the position of having to regurgitate to his instructors what it is they see as important, while at the same time, outside of that sphere, developing his or her own knowledge through his or her own self-instruction as such. The other facet related to that is, I don't know whether we should really depend upon the European-oriented university to provide us with our cultural education.
It's not European I'm talking about.
but many black institutions are European.
Oh, okay, yeah, all
right. Very European-oriented.
Go ahead.
As such. And the problem is, you have in many instances with the so-called many black professors, is the fact that they essentially meaning that the black student quite often is placed in the position of having to regurgitate to his instructors what it is they see as important, while at the same time, outside of that sphere, developing his or her own knowledge through his or her own self-instruction as such. The other facet related to that is, I don't know whether we should really depend upon the European-oriented university to provide us with our cultural education.
It's not European I'm talking about.
but many black institutions are European.
Oh, okay, yeah,
all right. Very European-oriented.
Go ahead.
As such. And the problem is, you have in many instances with the so-called many black professors, is the fact that they essentially are representatives of the European point of view. And the only philosophies and orientation they too have learned have been those philosophies and orientation. I think it means that quite often then, if the student's job that was begun in the 60s, where we established African studies and black studies program, has to be completed in the sense where these programs are not just mere electives or things you do while you have nothing else to do. They should be required in the sense for black students, and they should in a sense be the very first programs that a black student takes.
Why is say Shakespeare more important than Langston Hughes or James Baldwin? Why is that?
Because the Europeans perceive themselves as more important than non-white people, and it justifies their so-called superior position as such. It maintains and it helps to maintain the so-called unimportance of non-white people as such, and Hughes belonging to that category would not be permitted to be elevated there. It helps to maintain, of course, the power relationship as such, and to also build in values in the black student, to value what is not his as being more important, which then focuses his attentions and energies on what is European. In the sense, it helps to maintain what I call that hypnotized state as such. See, I don't see them as being valuable in the sense of teaching more or providing more knowledge. I see them as a part of the mechanism for maintaining a system of controls, and which is maintained not so much by knowledge, but by the refocusing of attention, the maintaining, and by the establishment and building in of values. It also reduces the revolutionary potential of black people, because you cannot revolt against a people whose values you share. And therefore, it makes the educated black, who were he educated along Afrocentric lines and along philosophies that were very distinct and different from European philosophy, that would set him up then to actually then rebel against Eurocentric psychology and philosophy as such. But since he values that philosophy, the only thing that he can ultimately do is seek reformations to reform the systems, which is pretty much where black leadership has been set. Now, it's not a leadership that's seeking to bring about a new world order, for instance, a world order that's based on, say, different philosophies, but one that seeks merely to share the material culture of whites.